take off for a wee while. Morning, folks. It's a little bit of a grey day, but it is dry. It was very wet again overnight and really quite windy. The wind was loud enough to wake me up in the night, and then it took me a wee while to drift off to sleep again. The wind was over the high tops and in the forest. Where I am here, I seem to be pretty sheltered because the tent barely got a rattle. There was no flapping, or it was just background noise. The roaring of the wind over the mountain tops, I guess. I'm getting a bit poetic this morning. So I've got some porridge on the go here, a cup of coffee, I've got some peaches as well, and I'm boiling up another kettle so that I can fill my bicycle flask with coffee so I can stop later on and have I've got a sandwich still. They're not quite as fresh as they were when I set out, but they're good enough. So I've got a couple of sandwiches there and some coffee on the bike, and that'll keep me going today. So my plan today is to bail out because of tomorrow's weather. So I've got quite a long way to go, but it's all very doable today. It's a wee bit of a challenge, but the biggest challenge is actually getting up and over this high ground here, and I think I climb up to about 600 or so meters, something like that, and then drop down steeply on the other side. I might have to tinker with my front brake a little bit before I set off. The brake pads are worn and I don't know if I can get any adjustment on it, but there's not much braking on the front end just now. Yesterday's descent took the last bits of the brake pad off, I think, so I might be able to tighten it up a wee bit. It's hydraulic brakes, so they're not easy to work on in the field, and I do have spare brake discs, aplenty in fact, but they're all in the gear room at home. I don't have any with me, so I'm sure I can rig something up. So I'm going to break camp. I'm going to get the tent down. It's a little bit wet. I was hoping to put a dry tent away this morning, but that's not going to happen. And it looks like there's a shower coming down the loch as well, so I'm hoping to get the tent down and maybe get my breakfast done before that hits. And then we'll get on the bike. So let me crack on and get a bit of work done here. Oh, that first cup of coffee in the morning. Delicious. I'm more or less packed up. I've got a couple of things to throw into these panniers, clip them on, take this warm layer off and put it into the dry bag, the rack bag that sits on top of the panniers. But first, I've got to enjoy my porridge. Porridge with blueberries. It's looking quite nice. I've not made it quite as soupy this morning. It's very good. A big thumbs up to these expedition foods. Excuse me, speaking with my mouth full. I'm not in a particular hurry this morning, folks. I'll tell you a wee story before I break camp. So this is Loch Ossian, and at the bottom of Loch Ossian there's Loch Ossian Youth Hostel, which back in the day when I was a boy, it was open in the winter as just as an open bothy, and I had many adventure there in my teenage years. But I'm going back to my very early teens with this story. The hostel had fallen into disrepair and it was needing a lot of work done, and so kids from what you might regard today as an underprivileged background were invited up, and under the care of some teachers and outdoor instructors. And the deal was that we did a little bit of work on the youth hostel, and then at times we were given a little bit of tuition into how to handle ourselves in the hills. Anyway, I had a whale of a time there. I didn't have any outdoor gear. I remember turning up in an old pair of trainers and my jeans and a t-shirt. But the days rolled by and I did a bit of work. I had a head for height, so I did quite a lot of the roofing work. But then we were running low on supplies, so the instructors and some of the teachers took us across to Fort William on the train with the idea of resupplying, and then some of the folk were going to jump on the train and come back again with all the supplies, and a few of the hardier souls were going to walk back from Fort William. And when I heard that, then my hand went straight up. I wanted to do the walk. Now, if you know the route, it's a well-trodden route, but we're going back. I was probably about 14 years old at the time, so I think I'd probably be in second year at the secondary school, the high school. And it's a good long distance, and back in these days the trail wasn't quite as easy to follow as it is now. There were less people doing it, so now it's reasonably well eroded in places, which makes for a kind of boggy trail, but it makes navigation easy. Anyhow, off we went, a bunch of us, with 2 instructors I think we had with us, and we hiked up through Glen Nevis and beyond the waterfalls at Steel, and then away across to Munich, and then at Munich at the boggy bit, a couple of the kids fell in the bog, and people were getting really tired. And I had spent most of the day out front, walking several hundred meters ahead until I couldn't see them anymore, and then sitting down and waiting on the group catching up. Anyway, the instructors were getting worried because it was late in the day and we were supposed to be back for our dinner in the hostel. So the instructor said to me, he said, "You're going quite strong. Do you think you can go on ahead?" And he gave me some rudimentary directions of where to go. So along to the bridge, and then round to the bottom of Loch Treg, and then climb up steeply till you get to the railway, and then just scoot along the railway until you get to Carrower Halt, and then down to the Bothy. So it's still a good way out, but I thought, what an adventure. So I was totally up for it. I think back to that now, and think, oh, I wonder how they got away with it. But anyway, I had a great afternoon solitary hiking back to the Bothy, and when I got back and I told the tale that the others were feeling a wee bit wabbit, shall we say, they were not in the best of fettle and they were going slowly, but the instructors assured me that everything was going to be all right, and I had to pass that message on. Anyway, some of the instructors that had stayed back packed a rucksack and went off in search of the lost souls. And I was quite a quiet lad when I was at school, fairly subdued, and maybe a little bit sullen, to be honest. And I'd been very much keeping myself to myself, but that evening I was treated like a king. I was a hero for bringing back the message, and I got double rations. And remember, I was about 14 years old, I was a growing lad, and one of my overriding memories of spending a lot of time up here on that trip was of being hungry, because you only ate what you were given when you were given it. Anyway, I was on double rations that night, and I had a wonderful feast, and finished up, and a cold drink. I was given some Coca-Cola or something, or Iron Brew or whatever it was, and I went for a wee swim in the loch to get rid of the sweat. Like I say, I just had my jeans on and a t-shirt, and I'd done all that, and I was getting ready for my bed, and the others shuffled in, looking a bit worse for wear, dripping peat and sweat and sunburn and scratched and all the rest of it. And the sight of them only added to the heroic gesture that I performed in getting back and warning the others of what had befallen the larger part of the group. So a tale from Loch Ossian. And I'm going to cycle past the hostel in a wee while, when I finish this coffee and get down the track, that is. And it always brings a smile on my face. I look up to the flashing along the ridge top of the roof, and I thought, I put that there. It's probably been changed 3 times since I did it. That was so that would be 50 years ago, almost exactly 50 years ago, that I enjoyed that wee adventure. So the flashing on the roof has probably been changed, but I look across and I always think I did that, and then I have a wee chuckle to myself about my adventure coming in from Munich across to Loch Ossian Hostel on my own. And you know what, folks, I was very at ease in the wide open spaces, and I learnt something on that trip. That was my first extended trip into the hills, and I was just totally at home. I didn't have any fear of being alone in these big places, and it's stood me well throughout my life and my career in the bigger ranges out in the Sino-Himalaya where I worked. So, but I'm blethering. I'm going to finish up this coffee, the bags thrown on the bike and down the track. Doing a bit of clothing chat in the tent last night, folks. The gloves that I'm wearing are workman's gloves. I buy them by the box load for the garden and for the outdoors. I think when you buy a box load it works out about less than £5 a pair. And they're just grand. They're not waterproof, of course, but they're a bit damp just now, but they'll soon warm up. I do actually have a pair of technical gloves with me just for safety. I have a pair of Dachstein mitts, which they're woolen. They're also not waterproof, but even when they're wet, they're very warm. But I have Gore-Tex over gloves that I put over the top of them if it's really hammering down with rain. Well, we're on our way. I'm climbing, folks. I reckon I've got a corner coming up. I've been climbing directly into the wind for the last few kilometres and it's quite brutal. About a fifth of the way up, a good way above the loch, although it doesn't seem that high. I'll turn you around in a minute, but very shortly I turn and I go round this. Can you see that? Let me show you that. Well, you've got a funny angle there, folks, but I go round this little mountain here. Once I turn, I've still got a massive amount of climbing to do, but I'll have the wind behind me, which will help a wee bit. Let me pause the camera for a minute, I'll turn it around and I'll show you Loch Lossie and you'll see a little bit. You can see where I camped last night. Well, it might be difficult for you to spot. And then the route that I took through the hills is all lost in the mist this morning. You're pointing into the mist, folks, so the lens is going to get a little bit damp, but I camped, let me see, on that little point down there, and then I can't really show you, the screen is too small for me to make out where I came through the hills, but away beyond that and then up to the left I wound away through the hills by way of Strathossian, and then up ahead here you can see the path just turns a little bit to the right and then goes on for another kilometre or so on a ascending traverse, and then it turns sharply to the right and round the back of that wee mountain that I showed you. So it's too bumpy and I'm going too slow to film. The handlebars are jiggling about everywhere, so I'm just going to turn the camera off for a wee while. I'll check in with you soon. progress. Well folks, I'm round the bend, maybe literally. I've come round the big sweeping bend, very steep on the bend, and now I'm on a rising traverse, just slowly crossing the contours one by one. I was complaining about the wind in my face coming up there. I've turned almost 180 degrees and I've got the wind in my face again. I hope you can hear me over the sound of the wind. It's pretty breezy. On one of my last videos, Gary from New York, shout out to Gary, hope you're doing well, sir. Thanks for supporting the channel. Gary mentioned he was a road cyclist, that it didn't matter which way you went on the big circuits, you always ended up cycling into the wind morning and afternoon, and well, that's what's happening today. I came up in the opposite direction into the wind, and I'm going in this direction into the wind. Still got a few hundred meters of climbing, and then I get a long descent, quite a fast descent. I'll have to take it easy with this front brake. I managed to get a wee bit out of it this morning, but it's slowing me down, but it certainly isn't enough to stop me. So I'm relying heavily on my rear brake, which can easily lock up the wheel. Anyhow, I'm chuntering on here, and I don't think I'll be able to use any of this footage because of the wind, so let's move on. Can you see my route ahead, folks? Away up that ridge that's coming down. I've got to cross that ridge in about there, I think. It's a long climb, but it's fairly uniform. Well folks, fasten your seatbelts, put your tray tables away, we're starting our descent down towards Loch Aik, and then along the road to Bridge of Balgay, and then we've got about 18 miles of road cycling, so still quite a long way to go. I've got about 2 miles of descent. I'm going to put the camera on for 15 seconds of it for you. Quite exhilarating, especially with no front brake. I'm going to get bumped and shuggled, so it's going to be a bumpy landing. But the high ground is all behind me. It's an easy day now. Well, I'm hammering on, folks. There's signs of civilization down there. I can see some electricity pylons, and looking across that way I can see the wee railway bridge that goes to Rannoch station, and then away in the distance, you probably can't see it, might be too low down, you might just see a little bit of Loch Leyden. If you haven't watched my canoe journey across Rannoch Moor, where I paddled Loch Ba and then into Loch Leyden, have a wee look at that video. It's a nice video. Loch Leyden, away to the left, Ben O'Carter, Ben O'Creachan, and then the White Corries hills, the skiing hills. Can't remember the name of them. Crease and Miravuard, and Stobgower is maybe the big one that we're seeing. Looking back, just about fell off my bike. Looking back where we've come, the track away high on the hill to the left there. Funny view. I've got 18 miles of road to cycle now, folks. Nice easy afternoon. I think I'm about 8 miles into the road cycle, folks. You hear me above the wind and the waves from Loch Rannoch. Man, it's a breezy day. I'm going straight into the wind. So yeah, about 8 miles in, about 10 to go. Fairly easy going after what I've been through the last few days, so not complaining, just rolling along on this smooth tarmac surface. Pointed the camera down the loch. Loch Rannoch is right at the far end there. It gives you an idea of what I've got to do, but you can also see the weather, see the waves thundering up the loch. Straight into the wind today. Exhilarating. Put love back on. Hey, let me sit a bit further back. Just checking in with you folks. I've got about a mile to go now, so almost back to John's house and my car. So it's been a grand adventure. I hope you've enjoyed it. I might say bye-bye just as I get to the car as I'm loading in the gear, but if not, I'll just wind the video up here. We were overdue a wee adventure together, and this has been an adventure. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Perhaps could have done a bit more filming for you, but I was really enjoying the freedom of movement, just moving through the hills and roaring along the tracks. It's been a grand few days. 3 days I've been out. Sitting here listening to the sound of the waves lapping. The wind has died a little bit actually, it's not too bad now. And it's an easterly wind, so I'm down at the east end of the loch, so it's not got the fetch. So the waves are quite small here. Gentle. So I'm going to roll down the road this last mile. Got the gear in the back of the car, the bike loaded up, quick cup of tea with John, and then down the road. So take care folks, thanks for tuning in, much appreciated as always. I'll get back to you again soon. Bye for now.